Hello, and welcome to our community conversation series with Safe Harbor of Sheboygan County. My name is Patrick, and my role with Safe Harbor is in prevention education. Our goal with this series is focused on creating a greater understanding about community agencies that victim survivors of sexual assault may first report to, along with gaining clarity regarding the roles of those agencies, the mechanisms of their support, and the resources available through those agencies. This series is also focused on creating more awareness surrounding the options available to victims and survivors, so they're able to make a more informed decision about how they wish to navigate community resources. Today, I'm joined by Britta, our Campus Advocacy Specialist here at Safe Harbor. Britta, welcome, and could you begin by introducing yourself and speaking on what your role and responsibilities are as a Campus Advocacy Specialist with Safe Harbor of Sheboygan County?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Britta. Like Patrick said, I am the campus advocate at Safe Harbor. And so what that really means to my role is that I offer confidential supports to students, faculty, and or staff who may have identified that they are currently in or have been in an abusive situation before. So maybe they currently are in something or they need support. Maybe they're looking to help support a friend or a family member. Those are also situations that we and I can help with. Since I'm not an employee at the university, I have the ability to keep things confidential. So if someone is looking for support but doesn't necessarily want to report the incident, I do not have that responsibility to move that on to the university officials. And I think that that's a big difference between confidential and non-confidential, or responsible and non-responsible employees on a college campus. And so typically my role looks like safety planning and offering resources to victim survivors. And like the rest of the services at Safe Harbor, they're free. And so that means there's no need to worry about insurance being billed or it going on to someone who maybe you don't want to see that you're getting the support or the help that you need.
Perfect, thank you. So in thinking about campus advocacy, how does Safe Harbor collaborate with institutions of higher education in Sheboygan County while also remaining to be a free confidential service available to members of a campus community? And I think you definitely touched on that a little bit, or you definitely spoke to that a little bit. I'm wondering if you can kind of just maybe elaborate just a little bit on those components.
Sure. And so collaboration is key to making this partnership work, right? And so confidentiality still remains our highest priority, or one of our highest priority, aside from safety. And so we do what's in the best interest of the survivor. And so not sharing information, that identifying information sometimes is what helps us continue to offer the most comprehensive, the most wraparound services that we can for that survivor. And so understanding our role within that, the survivor understanding our role within that is very important. I do want to remind that it is confidential, and so nothing leaves our conversation unless we have the signed document that is identifying maybe one or an entity that we would be helpful in supporting the survivor. So if there is any sort of follow-up services, and it might be helpful for someone else, another entity, another person to be involved in that, that can happen. But we definitely want to make it known that confidentiality is the highest or one of the highest priorities in working together in this partnership with the local, the institutions we have in our community.
Yeah, that's great. How might members of a campus community connect with you if they wanted the support from campus advocacy through Safe Harbor?
So I would say probably the best and the easiest way to get a hold of me and my services is by calling Safe Harbor's 24-hour helpline, where an advocate, whoever answers the phone, can then transfer you to my confidential voicemail. Or if we do have that ongoing relationship, that partnership, a direct call or email works great once we've kind of had that established partnership.
Yeah.
But calling the 24-hour helpline is probably the best option.
Perfect. And we did just display that in the beginning of this video, so I think that that's always kind of great to reference back to as well. So awesome. Understanding that marginalized populations are more likely to have a higher victimization rate, along with a lower reporting rate. How does Safe Harbor approach working with victim survivors of marginalized populations who may not be as trusting of systems or agencies?
Yeah, I think this is very important because it's very real. It's very real in our community. And so working with clients or victim survivors, I think it really starts with listening to them and their stories. So every story and every person is unique. And so that situation may have some nuances in there. And so with listening and with talking with that person, giving them the survivor the power to make choices of what comes next, I think is incredibly powerful for someone who may have had traumatic or maybe just poor interactions with systems in the past. And so I think also working alongside them and working with them to understand how trauma affects everyone differently. And so, we know that trauma brain works in very different ways for everyone, but maybe that's not remembering, certain details, or maybe it's remembering more as more you talk about it. And maybe things change a little bit from here and there, and that's okay. We just want people to know that we believe you. We're thankful and we're proud that you're coming and getting the support that you need. And so really explaining our role within that support system. So having, that conversation of, we believe you, we want to support you. These are the ways in which we can help. If we can't help, let's get you that, the resource that might be more helpful in this situation right now. And so I think that kind of comes down to relationship building, trying to understand the values, and if there's cultural pieces within that, being open and within ourselves to try and truly understand that. So I do think that it really comes back to that survivor and listening and just understanding how we can try and support them in the best way that we can.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So often in higher education, we hear the term Title IX. Can you explain a little bit more about what Title IX is and how the Title IX process is different from a criminal process?
Sure. And so just a quick little background. Title IX is it's a civil rights law that prohibits sex-based discrimination in any school that receives federal dollars, which is a majority of schools that we know. So, so what it is, it's an internal, I'll call it an internal process handled on campus. And so when there's a report of dating violence, of sexual violence, assaults, stalking, harassment, that kind of thing, it's handled on, we'll say on campus in this situation, because there's Title IX for K through 12, but we're talking about the college age here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of handled on campus. And so Title IX has deemed or appointed investigators. And so those are people who look into the reports of misconduct. So they will look at the official report. There will be kind of a, if witnesses are needed, or if there are witnesses that were present during this, event that happened, they will be kind of talked to. And so that part could be similar to like a criminal process, if that were to be the case, if there are any. And so kind of that process is handled on campus. There could be sanctions, which are violations of some of the law on campus. And so those are handled by the Title IX director, the Title IX committee. And so typically while this is happening, there's a no contact derivative that's given. And so basically that's like a no contact order. And so we try and keep, if there's two people, we try and keep them separate as much as possible to minimize the, the discussions that are had, or, the re-traumatization, the triggering, all of that. And of course, safety is our highest priority. And so accommodations that need to be made can be made through this process, maybe switching a dorm. Sometimes we've seen it where we've asked people to only go up this certain stairwell and this person can go down this stairwell because of the safety piece. And so things like that can happen, and they do happen. So if the student is looking to report the incident, but not through Title IX, so that would be just like any other, incident that happens in the community, that would be through the local law enforcement agency. And so that would be something that an advocate or a support person could be in there with, as well as the Title IX process, I should say that. So we always like to offer that, and it should be offered every single time there is a Title IX investigation going on. That's victim survivors should be offered a support person, which typically is in the form of advocacy, but it could be really anyone. It could be a family member or a friend as well. So I think I touched on your question. I think I hit your question.
Yeah, definitely. And I think where that's really kind of coming from is just sort of that understanding that within higher education, if an assault is reported, then it may follow in like a Title IX type process, but just having that understanding that Title IX process is not the same as a criminal process. That often, that those two processes are different and separate. So just having that general understanding, and I appreciate the depth that you really kind of weigh into in terms of kind of really kind of identifying some of the specifics that happen within that process, because it can certainly be nerve-wracking, right? It can certainly be kind of re-traumatizing in terms of going through that process. And really impact individuals substantially. So thank you. I really appreciate that. If a member of a campus community were to report sexual assault to Campus Advocacy, you essentially, through Safe Harbor, what does that process then kind of look like, and where could they meet with you?
Sure. And so in a private and confidential space is number one. So if someone is coming to me to just have some sort of meeting, maybe it's not about reporting or not reporting, right? We're just kind of discussing references or referrals, out to different agencies, or if we're just kind of talking through safety planning. So we want to be in a private and confidential space. So typically that in my experience has been in the health and counseling centers, because those are typically confidential spaces on campus. And so we would always encourage that they come alone or with a friend. It can be either way. So if they feel more supported by a trusting friend in their life, absolutely, if they're okay with that. Otherwise, we want them to know that we can be that for them. We want to be that believer and that encourager, that empower. The empowerment piece is so important. And so if they were looking to make a report, we would probably still be in that same space, hopefully. If not, we can meet at Safe Harbor's offices. That's always an option. If people's around is not okay, totally understand that. If they're looking to make a report to law enforcement, we could meet again at Safe Harbor, or we could meet at the law enforcement agency. That is always an option as well.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. You had mentioned encouraging individuals to perhaps maybe come alone in terms of when making a report, for example. And I just want to kind of remind individuals watching this, the reason that we make that recommendation is really focused around the victim survivor, so really being victim survivor centered, and knowing that there may be details that they may not be comfortable in sharing with a friend or family member present, for example. And we also recognize the amount of support that friends and family can often provide to victim survivors. So while that recommendation is there, we just also kind of want to be cognizant to why we make that recommendation typically. So I just wanted to kind of add that in, and it's something that a number of other individuals have spoken to through these conversations, which I think is really great for the community at large to really hear.
Yes, I appreciate you explaining that a little bit more. I didn't mean for that to come off the wrong way.
Not at
but
all.
There are reasons for that, right? Like Patrick had just explained. So
perfect. And Britta, the very last question that I have for you today is, so the final question I have for you today is, in recognizing that victims and survivors of sexual assault have experienced a high degree of trauma, what does trauma-informed care or a trauma-informed approach mean to you in your work?
Well, I think that is probably one of my highest priorities as far as meeting with survivors, is just understanding how trauma works, right? So I understand that, but then I think that's coming from a place of listening and giving that survivor the time, the power to kind of tell what they feel comfortable telling and sharing. I think offering support in ways that maybe the victim survivor has identified that's helpful for them, just because everyone is so different. Every situation is so unique that maybe it's a certain time of day that we meet. Maybe it's in a specific location that is helpful for them, speaking more so to maybe like the campus. Because we know that there's kind of those boundaries around meeting people, you know, in certain spots. But try and take all of that into consideration when meeting with someone. If their first language is not English, then how we can meet is we have the language line that should always be, you know, in the back of my pocket, really. And so I think it's just building relationships. It's getting down to, okay, this is a human, you know, this is a human problem. I'm a human. And so we all have these emotions that we I just want to support. And so I think offering that in the kindest way possible is kind of the center of my work. So that's what it means to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Britta. And yeah, Britta, thank you again for having this conversation with me today.
Thank you.
And thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thank you to our audience. Please join us in future conversations as we continue our Sexual Assault Awareness Month Community Conversation Series.